welcome back to my channel. My name is Peyton. If you're new here to talk about books, all the books. Lots of books. This particular vlog is going to be about horror, which is my favorite genre. I could talk to you about horror movies for days, weeks, years. If I just had like an open forum and like just tell me all about your favorite horror movies, I could talk for months. I'm not kidding. I love talking horror. But this vlog in particular, I want to talk about my most recent horror reads. I didn't start my channel until towards the end of October, and I'd already read a bunch of horror before then. So I just wanted to go through them all and talk about them, what I liked, what I didn't like. As someone who absorbs a lot of horror, I feel like I can be kind of numb to a lot of I don't know what that says about me, but it's really hard to scare me, even more so in book form. Previous years, and this past year, Naomi's Room really freaked me out, as well as last year I read Pen Pal, and that stuck with me. I had to stop reading that at night because it freaked me out so much. And this year's been kind of all over the place with horror reads, if I'm quite honest. Some of them have been great, some of them have been not. That's putting it like really nice. There's quite a few from 2023. I'll start towards the first half of the year and then make my way towards the most recent. The horror book that I've mentioned in previous vlogs or my best of 2023 video are not going to be included in this list. I've already talked about them and I don't really want to repeat myself with you all. But if you're interested in my thoughts on any of those, clearly quite a few made to my best of list, so I have lots of praise to sing about those. I just want to blanket statement this vlog. These are all my opinions. If you liked a book if you loved a book that I didn't like, that's fine. And if you hated a book I loved, that's okay too. The point is we're all reading and that's pretty great. Please, please look up content warnings for these books. I'm not going to say that for every single book, because honestly it'll get pretty exhaustive with horror, but if there's any sensitivities you have, please look them up before you pick up any of these books. But yeah, let's get into it. First book I'm going to talk about, I actually really did not like. I actually really hated it. It was like one of the first books I read this year. Near the Bone by Christina Henry. Man, oh man, did I not like this book. Led Astray by Book Talk, which isn't the first time, if I'm honest, but this was just not good. You know, it was nominated for Goodreads Choice, whether or not that really means anything. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up. I saw a lot of people recommending it. It's like their favorite horror, their new favorite author, freaks them out, and I'm just like, nothing happens. Nothing happens. This is about a young woman, Maddie, who is trapped in a cabin in this snowy wilderness with her very abusive, emotionally and physically abusive husband, William, who's much older than her. I swear to God, if I had to read the line, "A man needs sons, Maddie," one more fucking time. I made it through this book. It's like a little bit over 300 pages, but man, for such a relatively short horror book, to have that line repeated so many times. Okay, I get it. This is awful. Like, he's a terrible man. He deserves everything bad. Maddie discovers like some mutilated animals nearby their cabin and starts to hear noises while they're out hunting, and some hikers come along, and it is gory, it's pretty bloody, but it's just like in terms of story and writing, it was not good. So I don't know if I'll ever read Christina Henry after this, because I've heard people say pretty similar things about some of her other works. This was a first for me, and yeah, nah. There's so many plot holes and so many things by the end of the book that you're just like, well, what happened? That you're so frustrated. At least I was so frustrated. Like, what is it? What happened? And maybe it's all like a commentary on like her living with a monster, but there's also a monster outside. It's just like, yeah, but it's just like, why would you even set up the other thing in the first place? Next on the list is one I had a lot of fun with. Motherthing by Ansel Hogarth. This was so funny, like darkly funny. And so absurd, but I loved it. The main character, Abby, moves in with her husband to his mother's home to help take care of her. She's not had a great relationship with her own mother, so she's thinking this will be a pretty good bonding moment and like get to know each other and maybe have that mother she never had growing up. Doesn't really go that way. It actually makes their lives awful. She's pretty cruel. She's not really happy that Ralph married Abby and doesn't really have a problem making digs at her or their relationship in front of her. Abby is like really frustrated with her husband for being such a pushover, and it just makes for not a great living situation. Laura, the mother, ends up taking her life and starts to haunt both of them in really awful ways. Meanwhile, Ralph is dealing with really severe depression since the death of his mother. Abby is just like at a loss, like, she's dead. Like, why does she still have this horrible hold on both of us? So she comes up with a plan to try and get rid of Laura once and for all. And it has to do with her husband's favorite meal. And it just gets so wild. And I really liked it. I think it had a really good commentary on relationships and mental health and depression and grief, trying to have a baby as well. So like commentary on frustrations with that. Yeah, it was just a wild ride. I will read more by this author for sure. And I love the cover. The cover is just so cool. Yeah, this was fun. I'm glad I read this. Next is Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. A very short book. I think it's only 70, 80 pages, something like that. It's so weird. I'm trying to describe it. Simply put, it's about a man who's shopping, he's child-free, he has a girlfriend, and this one day he's out shopping and he sees this mother and child, and the child's acting like so horrible, like he has like secondhand embarrassment. He goes over and talks to her and tries to like calm down the kid and the kid is obsessed with sour candy. And so just by helping the mother, he is like tethered to this kid from now on. It changes his whole reality, changes his whole life. And all the kid wants is sour candy. Weird stuff starts to happen in his life, and he has to keep this kid happy, or else weird things start to happen. The kid screams and like stuff. It's just weird. It was like almost too weird for me, and it's so short. I wouldn't say this freaked me out. It more just made me really uncomfortable. I think most of us have seen a kid freak out or have kids who have freaked out in public, and how uncomfortable and embarrassing and awkward that can be. So like at least a good chunk of this book is like feeling like secondhand embarrassment for this terrible fucking kid. And on the outside they're like, oh, it's a father and son, la da da. And the dad, like, he just keeps like becoming like looking so ragged and burned and beat down, and they're like, well, what's going on with him? It's because nobody ever wants to assume the worst of a child. It was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was entertaining, but I don't think I'd ever read it again. Next is Gone to See the River Band. Gone to See the River Man. I would not want to see this band. It's a really cool name for a band, Gone to See the River Man. Gone to See the River Man by Christopher Triana. This is my first book by this author. It's pretty short. It's under 200 pages. This was awesome. Like, this was disturbing and vile and so unsettling. Yeah, this was wild. Pretty much has a commentary on people who write to killers in prison and become kind of obsessed and put them up on a pedestal like they're really cool otherworldly beings, that they've done all these horrible crimes, kind of want to rubberneck or like have some sort of notoriety, like, oh yes, I write to this person who killed all these women and did horrible things to them, blah, blah, blah. So this is about one of those people. So this follows Lori, who is in contact with a well-known serial killer named Edmund, who they correspond, they build a trust and some sort of a relationship. She worships him, and to the point where he asks her to do a little errand for him. Go to the woods in the town where he's from, I think it's called Killeen, and retrieve a key and deliver it to this person only known as the Riverman. Lori decides to bring along her handicapped older sister, and she can't leave her alone, to go on this quest into these woods, and it brings up a lot of personal demons and history with Lori and her sister, as well as just seeing and hearing a bunch of horrible things. It's so atmospheric, it's so unsettling. The writing's really good. It's like kind of under the splatterpunk genre, and that's not something I like to gravitate towards. It's not really for me, but I think this was just on that. Like, I would mostly say it is a horror thriller, mostly horror book. That ending! That ending! Oh my god! Yeah. I read this in like a day. I read this in a few hours. Like, it was so good. And that freaked me out. So, like, another, like, temperature gauge, like, I need something more like this, but not extreme horror. I'm not Alright, let's just keep going. You'll see. Next, I had my first foray in extreme horror. This is also one I saw floating on TikTok a lot. My curiosity got the best of me. I don't even want to say that. It didn't get the best. Woom by Duncan Ralston. So unbelievably fucked up, but I liked it, so I don't know what this says about me. Oofda. I only gave this 3 stars, not necessarily because of the extreme horror elements, but because the story was so predictable. Like, from the get. Like, I know exactly where this is going. So that's why I didn't give it a high rating, but it's filed under, like, most effed up books I've ever read, that's for sure. This is about a man, Angel, who comes to this really seedy, disgusting motel that he has some sort of a history to, but you don't know that right off the bat, or you do. You do. He hires Shyla, who is a sex worker, to come and listen to his story about his life, and he sits there and tells her this really awful story about his entire life from conception till present day, and then yeah, it's oof. Yeah. It's maybe because this was my first foray into extreme horror, I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna go there. It goes there. Like, it pedal to the metal, it goes there. And I remember telling Luke, and he's like, why are you reading this? But I liked it. I don't know. I liked it. Even though it was predictable and disgusting and effed up, like, I still enjoyed it. I don't know. I don't know. It's like I'm kind of embarrassed saying that. There's one other extreme horror book on this list. So and I'll get to that in a bit, but I don't know if the genre is for me. Next, left this off of my best of the year books because I couldn't find my copy anywhere. It's The Horror by David Sodergren. This is my new favorite horror author along with Nat Cassidy. This 5 stars, 5 stars. Not only is it a great horror story, it's a great story, it's great writing, great characters, and it's like body horror at like its top tier, and oh my god, like also charming. This is about an older woman named Muriel. She lives on the Scottish fishing village that is being overtaken by a overseas land development. They want to turn it into golf courses, pretty much. And she's one of the last holdouts in this village, not taking the payout. She doesn't want to leave. And then this mysterious fog rolls in, and with it brings this creature. For Muriel, it brings a lot of solutions to a lot of difficult things, and for others, it just brings extreme horror. Like, it has such a good commentary on like grief and your home and what makes your home. The ending, like, it almost made me tear up a bit, but don't get me wrong, this is a horror book. Like, it is like full on, like, some of the most brutal body horror I've ever read. I still think about Muriel and I still think about this creature that she found on the beach, and it's not a long book, but it packs a wallop. Yeah. Feelings. Alright. And one thing I want to say, most of his work is on KU. There are some that you can buy, like I bought The Horror in a physical copy. But yeah, if you want to if you're curious and you have a KU account and just want to check him out, like, highly recommend. Most if not all of his work is on KU. And then after that, immediately after that, I was like, I have to read more David Sodergren. I read Dead Girl Blues. This, I didn't like it as much as The Horror, but I still liked it. I think this, for me, leaned more into extreme horror. Like, extreme horror kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, especially, like, it's a lot of violence against women and really brutal violence against women. It's about this young woman named Willow who is kind of like trying to figure out her life and make ends meet. She works as a stripper or a dancer, and one night while she's coming home from work, she sees this young woman in an alleyway who's just been completely obliterated, and she dies in Willow's arm. There's also this mysterious video that is linked to this dead girl, and Willow makes it her mission to find out what happened and unravel this mystery because the cops don't care and don't want to help, and sets out on her own, and someone is not happy about this and starts following her and starts picking off people around her. The ending is my worst nightmare. The ending is my worst nightmare. The ending for me kind of saved this book because it was just kind of getting like, hey, like what's the point? But it has a gut punch of an ending. It's just like, oh my god. And so I just like, I ended the book and I was just like, I need to watch like Golden Girls or something. Just that like, whew. Next I read This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. What a fever dream of a book. That is the best way I can describe it. It is so weird, especially towards the last half of the book. It is so weird. This follows a young couple, Vego and Thiago, who are living together, living pretty blissfully until they get this Alexa-like device called an Itza. It starts playing music randomly in the middle of the night, turning all the lights on. You hear these scratching noises. Things show up at their house that they did not order. Things they would never order show up at their house, and they're really confused. They try and return it, or they try and unplug it. That doesn't help. This isn't a spoiler. It's on the back of the book. Vera suddenly and inexplicably dies one night, and it throws Thiago into this complete pit of grief and depression. Things just start to intensify after that at the house with the Itza. Vera's death is pretty much like a front story page news. Away from it all, he goes out to Colorado and then things get real weird. I don't even really want to describe it more than that because I feel like I might spoil it. It does get really horrific, but more than anything, this is just a really weird story. It's so heartbreaking. The depiction of Thiago's grief and desperation and how much he misses Vera is so heart-wrenching, and couple that with some pretty insane horror and violence too that just like comes out of nowhere. I want to read more of his work. I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I finished it because it was so weird, but I read this months ago and I've still like on and off thought about it. Like when I catch it on like when I catch myself like just looking at my bookshelf and I see this book, I'm like, whew. Yeah, I recommend this. If you're looking for really weird fever dream horror, it reminds me of some movie. It's not exactly the same in terms of plot, but it kind of has a similar vibe. Horror movies like Mandy or The Void. If you like those movies, or like, it's like, that was really weird, but I dig it, this would be right up your alley. I almost hesitated putting this book on the list because I don't think this is a horror book, and that is Rouge by Mona Awad. I loved this book. I love Mona Awad's writing. I think she's incredibly talented. I think she is like just weird lit fic books. Actually, I would say Bunny is more of a horror book than Rouge is. I think this is just like a light thriller, more like a fairy tale mixed with Eyes Wide Shut. Which is more of a psychological thriller, which is that's what I would say this is. It's about a young woman, Belle, who, hearing about her mother's passing, goes back to her hometown to take care of her mom's house and just finalize all the details. During that time, she gets sucked into a beauty cult, and really weird, like in Mona Awad fashion, just really weird stuff starts to happen. It is a commentary on the beauty industry, beauty standards, how you feel beautiful, how you show up, finding beauty within yourself. Complicated mother-daughter relationships, which I love to read about. I don't think this is a horror book. It's not scary at all, but it is good. I just don't think it's a horror book, and I don't like that it's under that subcategory. You can disagree with me if you want, that's fine, but I just read this more as like a psychological thriller. But I will still read anything Mona Awad puts out. Next I read Moon at the Crusted Snow by Wabkashing Rice. This is about a Anishinaabe community in northern Canada, if I'm not mistaken. Very isolated. The closest town is hours away. The small, very close-knit community is preparing for the winter, and then everything goes dark. They lose power, they lose phone, they lose any type of radio connection with the outside world, And that's pretty much the entirety of the book, trying to find out what is going on and survive. And outsiders show up too towards the middle of the book. It is anxiety inducing. It is a very slow burn, post-apocalyptic. There is one chapter in particular where a couple of men had gone away for college and come back and relay what they've experienced. It was so anxiety inducing. I was reading it by myself in the house. I called Luke to figure out, I was like, where are you? Because like just the thought of not being able to connect with or call your loved ones, oh, it made me so anxious. So like props to that. The ending though, it just ended so abruptly, like climax and then end. Like there's a short epilogue, but then it's just like, and luckily he has the follow-up to Moo the Crusted Snow coming out in October. I did really enjoy the writing and the story, so I'm excited to see what happens with the exact same characters. Next, I'm smiling because, alright, hold on. Last Days by Adam Neville. This really freaked me out. Of all the books that I've talked about, of all the horror books that I've read this year, this scared me. Pretty much as Naomi's Room did. It's a chonker. There are sections in this book, more so at the beginning, that are written so vividly and so well. And they're so horrifying. It played a movie in my head. So horrifying. This follows a guerrilla filmmaker, Kyle, and his cameraman, I think it's Dan? His cameraman, Dan. They're in desperate need of money. They're kind of on dire straits. So they get this opportunity to film a documentary about this cult called The Last Days. This crazy leader named Sister Catherine. Businessman who approaches them is just so shady and gross, and like he knows more and he's not letting on. As soon as they start diving into research and filming these locations and interviewing survivors of the cult, stuff starts to happen to them that they can't explain. It follows them from London to France to California. Oh, it's so scary. Like parts of it are so scary. I did give it a lesser rating because it kind of drags towards the 70% mark, and then the ending is just really weird. Be in the minority with this because this is one of his better reviewed books, if I'm not mistaken. I've also heard that Adam Neville has a problem sticking a landing with his books. And when I finished it, I felt like a little unsatisfied, but it's been months now, and I'm just like, man, this is good. Like, this is scary. So I might have to change my rating on this. Probably read more Adam Neville. Yeah, I recommend this one if you have time and like want to get freaked out. This was great. My only DNF on this list. This has a pretty high rating too on Goodreads. Should I pick it back up? But I don't know, because I tried. I got over 100 pages in and I just couldn't do it. It's The Exorcists House by Nick Roberts. On paper, this description is everything I love in horror. Like, I love possession, haunted house, kind of clueless family, and like deep-seated evil. All about it. The thing about this one, I hated the writing. I could not get past the writing. It felt so juvenile. The story was just like okay, and let me know if I'm wrong, if I should pick it back up, but it was just, I just didn't care enough. The dialogue was just not well written. Can't deal with bad dialogue writing. It's just like, oh, it just completely irritates me. So I didn't finish this one, but let me know if you finished it and really liked it and if I should give it another chance. Alright, second to last book. Come Closer by Sarah Grant. This was so unsettling, so anxiety inducing. Oh my god. Like, so this follows a woman, Amanda, who starts not feeling right. She doesn't feel great. She keeps hearing weird noises in the house, having these really upsetting, disturbing dreams. Notice that her temperament's different too, and she's just annoyed, and she has these long blackouts. She's this architect who just like cannot do her job anymore, has these outbursts with her boss. Such unnerving behavior that's not like her. So she starts to think she's possessed. I loved this because it's written in the perspective of the possessed or who you think is possessed person. Is she losing her mind or is she actually possessed by a demon? It gave me the same level of anxiety that the movie Unsane did, where you feel like no one believes you that this thing is happening and no one believes you. No one in position of medicine or psychology or your loved ones believe that there's something inexplicably wrong that only you can see, and how frustrating that is, and how isolating that is, and how alone you feel, and horrified compared to Rosemary's Baby in that regard, which is one of my favorites, if you didn't know. This is, oh, it's so... The very last book I read this year that I have not talked about is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This follows a mother and her son Christopher who are the mother is escaping a really abusive relationship, so they find this town in the outskirts of Pennsylvania to make their home. Shortly after they arrive, Christopher disappears. He goes into these woods that are nearby and he disappears. He is found 7 days later, not a scratch on him, nothing wrong at all. But Christopher has this horrible feeling and thoughts in his head that he has to build a treehouse in the woods before Christmas or everyone will die. I'll say this. I had such high hopes for this. People compared it to a Stephen King book, which I totally saw at the beginning of this. There's characters in the town, you have their whole entire backstory, where they grew up, what they're doing, what they're wearing, how they smell, their habits, and like very reminiscent of Stephen King's writing, where you get to know absolutely everyone. I really loved, like I want to say the first 60% of this book. I was so invested. I was like, this is going to be one of my new favorite horror books. Here's the thing. It got so religious. I was like, where it started off being like you would think really paranormal or hauntings. What's the history with these woods and these weird people in the town? Like there's something more sadistic going on. I say sadistic, that was the wrong choice of words, because it just gets so religious and like good versus evil, and like I was just rolling my eyes by the end. I was like, man, my man Steven, you started off with such an awesome... This book had so much potential to be really good, and it just bombed for me. Alright, that's it. Alright, I'm looking for horror recommendations. What are books that scared you? What are books that you really loved? What do you think I would like that wasn't included on this list or that you really loved? I want all the horror recs. So I would love to do a vlog about reading your recs, so please put them down below. But as always, thank you for watching, thank you for clicking, and I will have more videos for you soon. Bye!